G'day, I'm Travis Steele from the Global Consciousness Ascension Project, or GCAP. So, as you can tell by the name, our intention is to help raise the consciousness of the world. And we're not trying to alter the perception of the whole world. That's just not feasible, and pretty much infringe upon free will. And people don't seem to like when you shove your beliefs down their throat. They tend to get a little bit defensive. So, our goal is simply to get the information out there to all those who are ready. As you'll soon see, that's all it takes to help change the consciousness of the world. So I'm no ascended master or guru, just a regular guy who's had some irregular experiences, which throughout my studies I'm actually finding to be a lot more regular than I first thought. So I've had some very profound spiritual experiences, be they from simple synchronicities to lucid dreams, entheogens, meditation, even from just other people in my life who shared experiences with me and in my presence, or just sharing through verbally through their experience. Things that just can only be described as spiritual. So my talk today, if you haven't figured it out already, is very spiritually based, but my aim here is not to discredit any religion, but rather unite them all for the greater good of consciousness ascension. So we all have the same infinite creator, or God, and all share the same consciousness thanks to that God, so the rest is pretty much secondary. Ascension and consciousness, well, some of this information may be older hat to you, so if it is, please try and hold off the Sandman. If it's not, then hopefully you'll get some great value out of it. But overall, the way I put it together and how it's going to help our consciousness ascension is definitely something new. So to understand how psychology or our psyche is key to our ascension, we must first understand what ascension and consciousness is. So consciousness is different for everything, as everything has a different level of vibration. So like a pen or this mouse, has a low vibration, and its cells and atoms, or its consciousness, tells its cells and atoms and things like that to behave in a specific way. Now, humans have a much higher level of vibration and consciousness, so it's vastly different. Not only do our atoms and cells and protons and all those things know exactly how to behave and what their task is, without our consciousness, without conscious thought. But we're also aware that we are aware. So that's basically the most simplest explanation you could give to cover that topic. What is ascension? It's when our energetic vibration rises to a higher density. Our knowledge or our awareness and perception raises to a higher level. Just as we did in the ancient days of Lemuria and Atlantis, or even post-Diluvian cultures such as the Mayans or the Native Americans. Many religious texts call this ascension of the mind things like the true self, the non-dual consciousness, Christ consciousness, Buddha mind, the soul self, Atman, the master, the observing eye, the higher self, and all those things are explained in those spiritual texts. I'll give you a quick example, like in the Bible, John 14:12, where Jesus or Yeshua said, "I shall do these things, and so shall you, and more, for I go on to the Father." So he's essentially saying, he's leaving early, and you guys are staying on to with a much different set of circumstances that are going to enhance your spiritual ascension. You're going to go and be able to achieve a lot more than even he will during his incarnations. Okay, the planet is actually going through an ascension also. So Mother Earth, or Mother Gaia as the consciousness of Earth is known, is also currently going through an ascension. And the way this works is the Earth actually has a wobble in its axis. So while it's rotating normally in its 24-hour cycles, it's also got this great large oval shape, as you can see there on the graph. And this is known as the precession of the equinox. So approximately 26,000 years it takes to complete a full rotation, and it's been said that at the 13,000 year mark, or half rotation, the poles would actually shift. Not completely invert, but shift in a way. It's actually been documented historically. And this time around, we're in line with the centre of the galaxy, passing through the photon belt, which is created by the Sun in the centre of our galaxy, known as the Milky Way. As you can see there in the graph, when you're moving away from the centre of the galaxy, you're going into a more sleep-like state. It's because there's less of that energetic consciousness raising energy and photons coming from the centre of the galaxy. And when you're on your way into the centre, towards the centre of the galaxy, you're getting more of those. So that's why we seem to be naturally going through this process of awakening, and I'll go into that more just in a sec. We will be moving through the fourth dimension into the fifth dimension, which in our case will be ascension to fourth density as humans. So density is actually the frequency in which something vibrates at. So for humans on Earth, this is known as the Schumann resonance. So if you imagine 2 points with a line in between them, excuse me. So you've got 2 points with a waveform line in between them. For a low vibration, it's quite a flat waveform. For a low density rather. And for high density or high frequency, there's a lot more of that frequency or that waveform inside those 2 points, and therefore that's called a higher density. Now, if you were to live in a 2D world, it's naturally going to be almost impossible to comprehend living in a third dimensional world. So for the same, us trying to imagine what it's like to live in a fourth or fifth dimensional world, it's just not possible to really fathom, because we're limited by our 5 senses. So the greatest insight into these things is our dreams. And that's why indigenous cultures focus so heavily on them, and why lucid dreaming is such a powerful tool into understanding the spiritual realm. As the saying goes, dreams are real as long as they last, but couldn't the same be said for life? Gets you thinking. The magnetic field and the Schumann resonance. The Earth is currently experiencing a loss in the magnetic field, or the ionosphere, which is correlated with the increase in the Schumann resonance. So for many years this Schumann resonance or frequency has sat constant at 7.8 Hertz, then one day started to rise just as the magnetic field starts to degrade. So what we're seeing is spikes in this frequency in increments of the Fibonacci sequence. And many days are being recorded lately of 16.5 Hertz and 8.5 Hertz. So what does all this mean? Well, now that we know 7.8 Hertz for human consciousness is our alpha or theta brainwaves, which is the relaxed, non-active, sleep-like or neutral states. And anywhere from 8.5 to 16.5 is our beta brainwaves, which is also known as the alert or cognitive, active and awake states. Hence why people are naturally awakening. What we also know about these higher frequencies is that they actually heal our DNA and are tied to our emotions. So let me talk a bit about the resonance or heartbeat, and we'll come back to the magnetic field in a moment. So as you've already seen, we get our vibratory frequency or heartbeat from the Earth. The Earth gets it from the Sun gets it from the Sun in the centre of the galaxy. And so from the Earth comes to our heart, the heart sends it to the brain, and the brain sends it out to our cells, our protons, our neutrons and all that. And yeah, that provides all our clockwork and our energy, frequency and things like that. And this is a very important process, as we now know through studies that fear and love are the core emotions that we feel, and the rest are just derivatives of that, and they directly affect our DNA. So we have 64 possible DNA code activations, yet only 20 of them are currently active. And through studies we now know that fear is a slow, low vibratory waveform and touches very few of our DNA codons, but love is a fast, high vibratory frequency or waveform that touches many of our codes. So when you experience an emotion on a regular basis, you produce more cells that have receptors to that emotion. That's all thanks to the hypothalamus in the brain. So whenever you're, whether it's from an outside influence or whether you generate it yourself, you generate that emotion, you're going to be creating cells that are receptive to that emotion and not to other emotions. So it takes 7 years to go through a full cycle where every single cell in your body has been replaced. This is where the 7-year itch comes into it. So what we're finally seeing through science is, pretty much what we've known intuitively, right? And we can also see why this information helps those who are in control, and fear is their main weapon, which I'm going to touch on a little more shortly. But now back to the magnetic field. Russian scientists have been recording this magnetic field, or the ionosphere, for a long time, and found spikes at specific moments in time that correlate with negative events in our history. The biggest being 15 minutes after September 11 or 9/11. So we can start to see how our conscious emotion affects these two fields on a collective level. And what does all that mean? Well, when you look back on ancient esoteric knowledge, we find on this topic, we find that they believe the magnetic field was created to block our traumatic memories of the past, like the Great Flood and other large-scale tragedies, and things that are encoded within our DNA by blood relations, in order for consciousness or souls to be able to move forward and get the required experience to ascend. And soon we're going to reach a point where both the magnetic field and the Schumann resonance are going to meet, and this is known as the 0 point, where we're going to remember everything and we're going to ascend. So we're going to be ready for it. We're going through a process of awakening, and it's not just going to happen boom like that. All of a sudden we're not ready for it. Not everybody will be ready for it, but there's going to be probably more than there ever has been ready for this process. So we're doing our part to help everybody we possibly can be ready for this process. The Mayan calendar, fantastic piece of work. Oahu, I'll read out the divination reading for December 21st, 2012, because it is quite important for what we're talking about here. So yeah, like I said, Oahu, sun, is the light from which we emerge, and the light to which we will return, a year of the vision of the eagle and its connection with grandfather sun and the solar mind. The lord of the age of flowers, balance in the material and physical worlds, strong, intelligent, hard-working, yet tender and brave, this year anchors a spiritual certainty and to the understanding of cycles of time and the independence of all living things. It offers us the ability to use the creative power of the universe. We will pass many tests of the mind and will. Remember to act from trust and let go of belief in struggle. So you can pull many golden nuggets out of there, like the ability to use the creative power of the universe. We're becoming co-creators. that's where we are in the stair step of the consciousness evolution, according to the minds. Remember to act from trust and let go of the belief in struggle. So stop feeding into the fear, stop letting it manipulate you, trust your intuition, things like that. So have a look into that a lot more. There's so many good things you can pull out of it and decipher. The minds prophesize the beginning of this process, obviously on December 21, 2012, as they did for every single part of the consciousness ascension. Their calendar was more than a device for keeping track of time and date. It was for knowing every aspect of consciousness. The mind calendar is not only a calendar known to be based on the galactic cycles. The minds claimed they created this calendar in order to monitor the light coming in from the centre of the galaxy and how it affected our DNA. We now know through the work of Fritz Pop that DNA not only absorbs light, but it also emits light. DNA also appears to be the bridge between our physical and etheric bodies. Modern science now realises our DNA directly reflects our consciousness, making it possible for us to willfully change our DNA. So the minds, they had a chronological stair-step of creation where consciousness ascends in a cyclical manner, starting with creation at the bottom 16.4 billion years ago. Now, how did they know that the universe began 16.4 billion years ago? Well, obviously they had knowledge from higher, from the spiritual realms, but also thanks to scientists today, they know that thanks to the Hubble telescope, that the universe began approximately 14 billion years ago, they predict now. So based on everything that the minds know, the intricate and precise knowledge, such as from their architecture to the astrology to consciousness to vibration and energy, the unbelievable understanding of everything that today's science cannot match. I'm tipping that the minds are probably on point. So their cycles of consciousness ascension consisted of 13 steps, just like their pyramid in Chichen Itza. And each step or cycle is 20 times smaller than the last, or shorter than the last. So consciousness is progressing exponentially faster at those higher levels. And yeah, we're at the top at the moment. So, have you ever noticed how things like time seem to be speeding up? You don't have enough time in the day. You notice how human consciousness is changing more rapidly than it ever has. What's it called? The generation gap is, the lines are being blurred. Well, it's all been predicted by the minds, just like the ascension process. As Earth is coming to the end of a cycle called the precession of the equinox, where we're entering the photon belt, and this is said to be the driving force behind our ascension, which will be into the higher density of the fourth density. I'll just read this out for you. The Mind Daykeepers view the December 21, 2012 date as a rebirth. It will be the start of a new era resulting from and signified by the solar meridian crossing the galactic equator and the Earth aligning itself with the centre of the galaxy. At sunrise on December 21, 2012, for the first time in 26,000 years, the Sun rises to conjunct the intersection of the Milky Way and the plane of the ecliptic. This cosmic cross is considered to be an embodiment of the sacred tree, the tree of life, a tree remembered in all the world's spiritual traditions. Some observers say this alignment with the heart of the galaxy in 2012 will open a channel of cosmic energy to flow through the Earth, cleansing it and all that dwell upon it, rising it all to a higher level of vibration. So we know that all this energy coming in from the centre of the galaxy is helping cause those spikes in the Schumann resonance and heal and change our DNA. So how is ascension achieved? As I already explained, it's happening naturally, but there's a myriad of ways, and some of them are very complex and take many years to achieve a desired result, such as telekinesis, remote viewing, channeling, macabre, light body, rainbow body, whatever you want to call them. And all these have a specific way in achieving those results, but they're all psychic abilities and parts of different parts of ascension, but I'm talking overall ascension to be ready for the higher dimensions. I'm not talking about specific powers, if you will. So I'm going to give you a more generic approach on how you get to ascension. Which is, if you become more in tune with the spiritual nature of reality, look for the signs and synchronicities from our spiritual guides, use regular meditation, introspective thinking, have more loving thoughts, casting out the fearful and the negative. Obviously, those thoughts are imperative to ascending, unless of course you want to go the opposite direction, which is a lot harder, using fear. Trust your intuition, live in the now, increase your spiritual knowledge and awareness, and even just going through everyday experiences like being a better loving partner, being a better friend, parent, sibling, even becoming a better person to strangers. Meeting new people, sharing truthful knowledge, being a service to others. If you're continually manifesting situations within your life, you may need to take a hint, learn the lesson before you can move on. Don't judge others unless you want aspects of others unless you want to invite that aspect into your life. Things like that. They're all very spiritual based philosophies, and all very truthful, and they all will help guide you in the ascension process. So yeah, you'll be prepared for what's to come. You just need to be 51% loving and spiritually, not spiritually based, loving and in service to others. Just 51%, so just a little bit more than you do serve yourself, that's all. So these are all great ways in which we can move towards ascension, obviously. But the important thing to note is that we go through these processes in a gradual and logical manner, just as we do in every aspect of life. You need to walk before you can run. It's just the same here. You can't become fourth density when you're not ready for it. It's just not going to happen. So there will be people who just aren't ready for it, and that's fine. But we're here to show this information and help those people who are on the path get prepared for it and make sure they are ready for it. Unfortunately, there is ultimate control being conducted upon us at the moment. So if we look into how information is being controlled, we can get a better picture on how fear is being used as a weapon against our consciousness and how it's holding us back. As Manly Hall here says, to repress rebellion is to maintain the status quo, a condition which binds the mortal creature to a state of intellectual or physical slavery. But it's impossible to chain a man merely by slaving his body. The mind must also be held, and to accomplish this, fear is the accepted weapon. The common man must fear life, fear death, fear God, fear the devil, and fear most the overlords, the keepers of his destiny. Does that sound like society today? Like what we're currently going through, what we're all currently experiencing? Yeah, I think it describes it perfectly. So currently our perception is being controlled by the flow of information, and when more people know who Kim Kardashian is over Nikola Tesla, it's not hard to see how. And we can see it absolutely everywhere, from mainstream media, the education system, politics, corporations, the policing system, to the fact we're ruled over by pieces of paper that we spend the majority of our lives trying to get more of, doing things we'd rather not, and making decisions based on how much of that paper we've got. Sounds like madness to me, right? Well, we're constantly pumped full of this detrimental information where fear is the main weapon that's holding our consciousness back, making us easier to control, causing us to be spiritually disconnected by focusing on the material things in the world. Consumerism, materialism, all those horrible things. Things that pretty much the only thing that's meant to be important to us, because that's all that can be proven, that's all that really exists. Now, through a beautiful part of science called quantum physics, we now know that that's not the case. We now know that matter makes up for 0.0001% of everything, and space makes up for 99.999% of everything else. So shouldn't we give, that's not empty space. That's full of energies and things that we just can't comprehend because they're outside of our five senses, they're outside of our field of perception. So we do need to give those things a lot more focus. There's a lot more at play than we realise. I mean, we'll know about it when we're on the other side, but at the moment, there's all this illusion put up in front of us, unfortunately. So that's why this information is so important to us. So, yeah, we know all that. Now, we also know that each proton, or which is smaller than an atom, is fractal or infinite, kind of like a black hole, and it has the same power of the vacuum of space. And this is a space that connects absolutely everything. If it's as above, so below. It's everywhere. Now, if you want to know more on that topic, watch Nassim Haramein's Connected Universe. It's on YouTube for a fantastic, detailed, scientific, mathematic, geometric description on how all that works, how it all ties together. It's absolutely marvelous stuff. Now, here's a great quote from Deepak Chopra. Perception is a learned phenomena. The world you live in, including the experience of your body, is completely dictated by how you perceive it. If you change your perception, you change the experience of your body and your world. So there you go. If you can get away from all this control and change your perception of the world, make it believe that it's beautiful, because it is. There's so much good in the world that's happening, yet we're filled with this detrimental information that's just not helping us whatsoever. It's holding us back, keeping us away from our true calling, the cosmic plan. Many of you are probably familiar with the term cosmic plan. So yeah, the world reflects what you project, but the same can be said the opposite way, as C.J. Heck says, we are all products of our environment. Every person we meet, every new experience or adventure, every book we read touches and changes us, making us the unique being we are. So it works both ways. We create our environment also creates us. So you need to be very aware of what you put in. So that leads us to the question, who's in control? Is God in control? Are we in control? Is it a symbiosis between the two? Well, if God is the omnipresent infinity and we are one, does that not mean we are God, or we are part of God? And is this not the biggest deception or distortion throughout all religions and science, and coming in from the information controllers? Well, when you dig a little deeper, you find out that actually throughout almost every religion that this is the case. Like it was in there. It's just simply been omitted throughout the years, been rewritten to suit a specific agenda, because we all know that history is written by the victors. So the same goes throughout these religious texts. So please continue to believe in your religion. I'm just showing you how all of them are united. But please go on and do some of your own research and draw your own conclusions on that subject, because it's there. So yes, you can well imagine how knowing this information could be quite, knowing that we are part of God and we have the power to be co-creators and ascended to the point where we're communicating telepathically, moving things via telekinesis and manipulating matter and levitating and so on and so forth. you can see how they would have a hard time controlling everyone. I know it sounds a little science fiction, but I assure you there's many out there who are doing these things. So if you want to do any research on that, look up the Tibetan monks and Rainbow Body Macabre, the super psychics and indigo children and things like that, and you'll see that there's marvelous things happening in the world, and it's true. It's a psychic powers are real. You just need to work extremely hard to get them, or unless they are born into you. Maybe you're on the ascended end of the scale when you're born. So yeah, when you research any of those, you'll see how they're being suppressed and all that, and why it's not being shown on mainstream media and things like that. They don't want that kind of information getting out. Here's a perfect example. From the industrial age, the controllers have been artificially exalting their intellectual proclivities, again to exacerbate the disconnect from source, from nature and from self. Genetic predisposition are reinforced by adroit social conditioning. Disconnected from the universal mother, repressed, canalized and non-integrated, the emotions remain in an artificially regressed and primitive state. Again, personifies exactly what we're experiencing these days. Now, it's time for some good news. That's the bad stuff out of the way. How can we free our minds? Well, consciousness learns through its connection, and there has been many experiments done to demonstrate this. For example, the 100th monkey effect, which many of you probably already know about, where they observed a new idea or behaviour that spread among all the other species regardless of location, and a critical mass number have learned, or when a critical mass number have learned or acknowledged certain information. So there's been many experiments done like this on human consciousness as well, such as a random number generator, transcendental meditation, and a specific experiment where that was conducted in Australia and the UK, where they showed a group a picture with like 40 hidden faces on it. So the group in Australia could find some, and then they found some more, but nowhere near all of them. So they went back to the UK and showed the picture over the TV, aired it over TV, and showed everyone exactly where the faces were, so they saw them all. Then they went back to Australia and they showed them again, and sure enough they were able to find them all. And there's also things like the like I mentioned, the transcendental meditation, where they're in a good one in Washington DC, where they wanted to bring the crime rate down, and you need a specific ratio of people to affect a specific number of the city you're trying to do it in. So for example, to affect 1 million people, you need 100 people doing the meditation. So they got I don't know how many people exactly they used for this, but they tried it out, and they all meditated on peace. So they consciously meditated thinking of peace. They felt it and thought it. Sure enough, during those times that they did the meditation, it brought the crime rate down by 30%. And that's a drastic number. It can't be put down to just coincidence, because it happened consecutively, consistently rather. So yeah, we feel pretty confident at Global Consciousness Ascension Project that we can get our message out to the critical mass and help the global ascension. Now, how do we fix our current situation of being controlled? Well, this is not a physical war to be fought. That just wouldn't end well for anyone. The only way to beat this enemy, take away the control that they have over us by ignoring it or no longer relying on it. Because when you give focus to something, you think of something, you rely on it, you're giving it energy, you're giving it life, you're giving it power. You are creating the need for it and justifying its existence, therefore are responsible for its creation. This is why these information controllers love using fear as their main driving force. Because besides love, it's the only emotion that affects us. on the DNA level and suppresses our consciousness, and they know that. Duality, or Einstein's theory of relativity, is quite relevant here. So when you stop using something that the system provides, it creates a negative for that system, like not using the electricity grid, or growing your own food, things like that. It's going to start causing negatives for this system. And when you tune out of the mainstream media, you start empowering yourself. You take back that power and control. So you may not, some of you may not see it, so I'll explain it another way. We currently have the technology and resources to feed, clothe, provide shelter, education, power or electricity to every single human in the world, yet without money or these menial jobs that we spend the majority of our life doing, yet we do not. So you've got to ask, why? It's just madness. If there's a better way, why not? Why aren't we doing it? Well, it's quite simple when you understand these things. That this 1% who are in control, they're the ones pulling the puppet strings of the presidents and the corporations and the politics. They've got the foothold on everything, and they've got the 99% running the hamster wheel, or the debt slave rat race. So why would they want to give up that control? They're on that negative end of the scale. So whereas others are on the positive end of the scale of trying to ascend. You can, either or is acceptable. It's not good and evil. It's positive and negative. It's that terminology, duality, exists, and it's perfectly acceptable in this realm. It has to exist because it helps us in our ascension. We see that negative, and it helps us learn, helps us to progress in the direction that we choose. So you can go either way, and either is fine. Obviously, it's a lot harder to do in the negative. You need to be 95% that way inclined, service to yourself, as opposed to only needing 51% service to others. So if you serve others and love others and share love to others, and just 1% more than you do yourself, that's all it takes, 1% or more. So it's much easier for us to ascend than it is on the positive end of the scale than it is on the negative end of the scale. So yeah, it's quite easy to get to the ascension process, and that's why we want to get this information out there to show you how easy it is possible, and just to be wary of it, just to be conscious of it, and get yourself ready for it, because it's coming. Yeah, so the key here is not to try and change their broken system that's designed to fail, but start creating our own that doesn't involve theirs at all. That would be the best way of tackling this situation. So there's many things we can do. We can participate in a contribution style community, such as where they use work hours, food, cryptocurrency like bitcoins, or information, basic necessities and things like that, instead of using money. So these are already well established and working well in cities all over the world, and even locally. So you can find out more online. I'm sure you'll be able to track them down and participate. There's also big projects trying to take this thing to a global scale, like the Venus Project and Ubuntu, or the Ubuntu Party Australia, which has just started here as a political party, and they're trying to take money out of the equation and start this contribution style community via the political avenues, give them more exposure that way. So it's quite smart. So grow your own food. It's another great way. So instead of buying it, you can grow your own. That way, it doesn't have the GMOs and all these toxins that they're putting in, pesticides and things like that. You think they're just trying to get rid of bugs that are destroying the food? It's much more sinister. So if you don't have your own room in your own yard, there's community gardens. So just search online and you'll be able to find community gardens. They're all over Australia, I know that for sure. And I assume they would be in other countries too. There's even people who give up part of their land to people in the community so they can get food in exchange. So there are also options too. Implement sustainable energy, or at least get a generator and try and get off grid. Homeschool your children so you can control and filter the mental pollution and control that is coming in from these indoctrinated, fear-mongering sources. This is, looking back on schooling, I realise now, wow, they really do lie about history and things like that. Because history is totally different. What I understand now compared to what I was told in school, it's a completely different world. And so therefore, yeah, I live in a completely different reality to what I did back then. Stop watching TV and avoid any mainstream media. The greatest spreader of fear and propaganda. This is well known. So use an alternative media, at least it's a little less biased. Be the light. I love this. Remember this analogy. You can walk into a dark room and light it up with a candlelight, but you can't do the opposite. So know you're on the favourable side, of course, unless you're choosing the opposite. So the universe, God, or infinite creator, has a plan for us, and it certainly doesn't involve killing ourselves or the earth. Greed, deception, lying, manipulation, fear, basically everything that these information controllers and our government are currently doing to us. And anything that creates a barrier between us and anything else. Especially each other. So we need to think of humanity as an organism, part of something bigger. And like all healthy organisms, we must work together or simply perish. So we need to rise above race, creed, gender, patriotism, materialism, consumerism, politics. Rise above it all and see every individual as you do yourself, that has simply had a different upbringing, in a different culture and a different environment, thus loving them with understanding, and regardless of their feelings or their preconceptions. So this is the first and most important step in creating a better world and freeing your mind. So thank you very much for listening. Love and light to you all. If you're anywhere in Australia or even worldwide, and you want to be part of the Global Consciousness Ascension project, please reach out to us. I'll put the links underneath the video. We're after help in many aspects, from website development to better presentations like audio-visual programs and things like that. So if you have any skills at all, maybe translation skills, translate these presentations into other languages and things like that, or maybe we're non-for-profit, so maybe you want to help out financially, get us to events and things like that. That would be much appreciated also. So however you want to help out, please reach out to us. If you do, become part of the project, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys again soon. Be on the lookout for my next presentation, which will be the cosmic plan and esoteric suppression. So it's going to be pretty in depth and cover obviously some somewhat conspiracy. It could be seen as conspiracy topics. So pre-warning you. I'm just the deliverer of information. Whatever you do with it's completely up to you. It's none of my business. I'm just trying to help out here, do what I feel is right, get the information out there and help the world, help the consciousness that I'm a part of. Namaste.